All right, here we go. Welcome to Breaking the Standard, where we are closing the communication and knowledge gap for the small business government contracting industry. I'm Aubrey Gainford, and today we have very special guest Ashley Nicholson here with us. Ashley, welcome.
Aubrey, thanks for having me on your podcast. It's a really dynamic podcast, and I feel like we're aligned in our missions of demystifying and democratizing the government contracting world. So thanks for having me.
No,
So
I'm so glad to have you. And if you could just introduce yourself for our listeners, I would love for them to get to know you a little bit more.
sure. So my name is Ashley Nicholson. I've worked for 17 years in business development, selling to the government, mainly in healthcare IT and supporting federal civilian agencies. And I worked as a director of business development at Cognosante and Caliber Systems, and have worked for small businesses and startups in technology as well. So over my career, I've won $500 million worth of business, managing capture, and I even won a $1.2 billion IDIQ, probably the largest I've managed. So I'm also really a big GovCon and technology nerd. And so 2 years ago, I founded my own woman-owned small management consulting and technology consulting business, Avenir Technology. And as part of this, we help with business development services, so pipeline development, strategy, capture management, business development services, kind of soup to nuts.
hmm hmm I love it.
And
I love all of it. And we actually got connected a couple of months ago, and I'm so glad that I've had that connection because I don't know how else I would have gotten the chance to meet you. But if you're not following her already, I will link all of her info at the end of this. But Ashley offers some really interesting ideas and leadership, mentalities and just simple things that you can implement now that would make a difference regardless what industry you're in. But I always think they particularly specifically pertain to government contracting. But that's just, how she and I think are very similar in that mind frame. But today, and she briefly mentioned this already, but we're going to be discussing the first of a two-part series around democratizing government contracting. And so to democratize it, we first need to demystify it. And so I guess I'm gonna pitch this to you because I'm really curious to see what you're gonna say about this. But like if when you start to demystify government contracting, I guess where do you start with that?
I mean, first, I think we kind of discussed this. We talked about, what's the concept of government contracting outside of the DMV and kind of what people's perception is, because of course we're in DC,
Mhm.
but it's interesting to see what people's perception is outside of the DMV.
And I guess so, what would you say? Because I've been in the DMV for a long time. I mean, and I'm not originally from here, but like, what would you say outside of the DMV the perception is of government contracting?
Yeah, so over my career, I've been really amazed that government contracting is still pretty insular community. A lot of people have no idea how to sell to the government or understanding of the process. Their perception outside is it's insular. You have to be a DC insider. They'll even use the term, which is pejorative, a beltway bandit.
Mm,
People think it's really highly political and dirty. That's kind of tied to television programs like Scandal and House of Cards, these kind of things. I think the perception is also that it's too complicated and messy to understand, that maybe you need lobbying to help you win contracts.
mm.
And then there's like this challenge around complicated jargon and language and acronyms. And then, I mean, as much as we hate to hear it being here, a lot of people think it's not a very sexy industry, that it's a boring industry, that it's kind of stiff, not interesting, not innovative. Um, and then there's also a little bit of optimistic naivete when I talk to people outside of DC. They think like, oh, I'm a small business, I'm registered on sam.gov, and now the phone will just start ringing and I'll get sales from the government.
How nice would that be, right?
So nice.
Um, no, it's interesting because I think being in this field until you take a step out of it or like take a step outside of where it's very much a everyday regular occurrence type of thing, um, it never occurred to me until you just said that, people that aren't from here might look at this as a very complex, complicated, I don't know how to get into it. Maybe it's not for me kind of thing, or, I don't know the right people because I'm not there, so I'm not even going to try. And
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's very much primarily here right now, but I don't think that means it needs to be. It
Mm-mm.
can definitely be across the country because there are companies all over the place. I mean,
Of course.
that can and should have the opportunity to do this. I mean, I feel like I get on my soapbox about this all the time with small businesses. It's like,
Me too, Aubrey.
I mean, in the industry, like the entire like small business government contracting industry has come a really long way.
Yes.
And I think it's got a little bit more of a way to go. But some of the people that we have in our communities are doing some really awesome things. And I think that this is just part of that conversation that needs to like keep going. Like this is the thing that we need to say to people that aren't part of this on a regular basis, that like it's not a bad thing. Like don't run the other direction. Like, you know,
Absolutely.
come come talk to us.
Exactly.
And with that, so like, if we have people outside of the DMV come and chat with us, like what would you say in terms of like the actual like realities of government contracting? Because I think once they get past the like myths and then what the actual like what so is, it's like,
Hmm.
I think that would make a real difference. So like, I guess what would you say some of those are?
So I'll give you my answer, then maybe you can give yours.
Okay.
It's a little nuanced. I think it's tragic that so many small businesses don't look at federal contracting seriously because of the perceptions. The U.S. federal government is the largest buyer and largest marketplace in the world. It spends $637 billion a year on contracts, so that's with a B. Um, and government contracts are really so beneficial to small business owners, and they have set asides for women-owned small business, minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned small businesses, different socially disadvantaged groups. So there's a lot of benefits there. Um, Government contracting is definitely an ecosystem, and relationships matter. So having an insider who knows the ins and outs and can help you navigate the system does help. But small businesses can also learn the rules of the game. Their learning curve is steep, but you have to put in the work, but it's not impossible. Um, as far as the political nature, so government contracting is probably unavoidably political because, going back to like Harold Lasswell's definition of politics of who gets what, why, and how, it's unavoidable that it's political in that sense. But I don't think it's exactly as people imagine. It's definitely not as dirty as portrayed in television shows. It has its interesting moments in DC, and you can work on some, sexy projects for sure, counterterrorism and cybersecurity, a lot of mission critical work. So it's interesting. Um, Lobbying is part of government contracting. That's undeniable, but small businesses don't need to lobby, and definitely not, one by one. They can maybe join associations, and that association can lobby, and be an advocate on their behalf as a collective. As far as it not being a sexy industry, I would say, like most industries, it has its sexy parts and its unsexy parts. But I mean, I'm not even sure it matters because of the large benefits. So, does it really matter if it's sexy or not if there's so many great benefits for small business? As far as the jargon, it does have a lot of industry jargon, which can be a barrier. But so does really every industry. And I don't find that as a unique barrier. And, you can learn it and then, start becoming dangerous. And then unfortunately, you can't just register in sam.gov and expect the phone to ring. You have to market and sell your company's services. So what do you think, Aubrey? What do you think are the realities?
Um, well, I think you touched on a lot of really great things that I agree with. You can't see being registered in SAM is very important, and it's a way that you can be, found if the government's doing research or searching for a specific NAICS code or, whatever. But you have to do your research and you have to know, like, if there's something very specific that you're really great at,
Mm-hmm.
finding which agency would be a great target for you to learn more about and then potentially partner with someone, subcontract for someone. You have to build those relationships. And like you said, like finding an insider. So finding a prime that's very familiar with that agency and you can offer them a service because small businesses have a lot of specialized abilities that large companies don't have, which is why large companies are always looking for smalls to be able to do those really specific things. So
Yes,
I would definitely say do your research, find someone, make the connection, but make sure you do your research before you
absolutely.
sign a subcontractor agreement because that is like not me, but the government cannot directly interact with a subcontractor. They go through the
Yes.
prime. So if you're having a problem, you have to take it up with the prime, not with the
Yes.
government. So that would be the first thing. Second thing is you know, just because it's currently in this environment in the DMV, I think that it's like a really great opportunity to break out of that and say, well, why the hell not? Can it be across across the United States, like everywhere?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
there are associations in every state with like
Mm-hmm.
under the Small Business Administration. There are tons of resources. So depending on what you want to do, if you have a specific certification, are you woman owned? Are you, veteran owned? Are you service disabled? Are you minority?
Mm-hmm.
You have different opportunities and different resources because we as the government are required to set things aside specifically for different types of certifications. We're encouraged to do that. Um, the other thing I would say is it can be really sexy because the government always pays. Like
That's true.
you will always have a very stable, sure thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard when you don't know if it's going to keep going the next month or year or whatever. You will
Yes.
know with the government that you do get paid, so you'll have some form of revenue to be able to, put back into your company or to potentially grow your company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, don't be discouraged by what it looks like. It's a big industry, but you
Mm-hmm.
could start out small, like
Yes.
um, micro purchasing. I mean, you don't even have to have a SAM profile for that, but you
No.
could literally do something up to $10,000, which is still a great amount of money for small businesses. And you can get like, an idea of how government does certain things. And then if you make a connection there, that could also be another in for you. Um, yeah, the language can be a kind of weird sometimes in how the terminology of how we talk and stuff, but just like any field, I feel like if you just take the time to, sit down and get to understand it, find really good companies or like programs that will teach you and like train you and go over some of the like ins and outs of how contracting works and what the process is. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that it's a specific thing. It can be available to anybody. So, but I agree with a lot of what you said. So, and we've touched on it a little bit, but now putting all of that aside, like, talking about like what the perception is, what the realities are, like, why do you think that government contracting is such a like compelling field and why should industry have this on their radar?
I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons. As we said, the U.S. government's the largest buyer in the world. Yes, it's not all monolithic, and as you said, you have to know your customers and specific agency missions.
Hmm.
But the U.S. government contracts 637, billion a year. I mean,
Hmm.
it's 162 billion in 162.9 billion in 2022 to
Wow.
small businesses via contracts. I
Hmm.
don't know of anything like that in other industries. And this will probably not change in our lifetime. In fact, I imagine the number will probably increase. So, when they interviewed Willie Sutton, the bank robber, and they asked him why he robs banks, he said, because that's where the money is. So that's that's one of the reasons government contracting is so compelling. Um, you should pay attention to government customers because that is where a lot of the money is, and that's not going to change. It's probably going to increase. And like you said, it provides so much stability for small businesses and diversification as far as their private sector customers versus government. And in some cases, federal contracts could be misunderstood by your competitors. And if
Mm,
you put in the time and are willing to learn and pay attention to it, then you can have an advantage and more diversification compared to your competitors. And then, I mean, the other one that's really different and important is that you've got funding that's set aside for small businesses and minorities and disadvantaged businesses, which really helps small businesses and disadvantaged groups compared to maybe the open market, things like that.
hmm hmm
And also, I mean, you've got really interesting missions and projects. So when I worked with a lot of startups, tech startups, I was really shocked at how many were so excited about these government contracts because they're getting to work on these mission focused projects and work in counterterrorism or analyzing data for the State Department and things like that, working with DoD developing new technology. So these are things you don't get to do in private sector. Sure, your projects aren't always fascinating and interesting, but a lot of times they're just really cool societal problems that you're solving that you won't get to do in private sector. And then, I mean, the other thing is the way I see it too is, talking about like venture capital speak. It's the largest source of non-dilutive capital. There probably is. I mean, you're talking about $637 billion annually spent on contracting. You've got a lot of programs like the SBIR programs, which the government invests in a small business and they invest in the small business, but they don't take equity. So unlike when a small business is looking at VC funding, they're going to have to give up equity. They're going to have to give up some of the control of their business. And, there's terms. The government really, invests a lot and doesn't really ask for equity. So that's really attractive even for, technology and some startup companies as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, look into the SBIR and they also have a Silicon Valley program as well. So,
Hmm. That's so key too, because I mean, the last thing you really want to do unless you have to is to give up equity in your company because
yeah.
it's your company, like,
Yes.
and then that's just I feel like that's such a touchy subject all the way around. So that's really great information too. I think in addition to everything that you've said, because I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you've said, I think you can learn a lot, not just only like subject wise, but a lot of people that I have known in this industry and either have left or moved on or done something different, you learn so many different like skill sets and, ways of interacting with people that literally can be applied to anything. I
Yeah.
truly think that, you could literally use anything that you learn in government contracting in something else if you chose not to stay in this career field. But there's
Mhm.
so many different options within the career field. If you're a small business, and depending on how big you are, and you're working on something, you need somebody to do research. You need someone to do business development. You need someone to
Mhm.
do capture, which I still know nothing about. And I need to continue to use, this community to understand this process. But there's all of these other pieces that give people an opportunity to contribute and learn and then be able to, hopefully win something and then be able to like really work on whatever they put out there. But I mean, there are so many things that I've learned in this field that I can use like in my everyday life and, how I'm like looking at things and,
Mhm.
going to buy something or doing my market research before I want to buy a walking pad for my home, which I did, but like it's just it's literally I think one of those things that I don't think you can go wrong with it. But the other
Yep.
thing I thought that you said that was really key was a lot of people that get into working with government contracting are very passionate about either supporting something in the public sector or supporting something for, our nation to be able to improve something or put something out there or protect, and it's a really cool thing to think about because everyone's kind of doing something for the same reason when you look at it. So you get to work on something that ultimately is either, developing something new, or you're protecting something, or you're putting something out there that's going to like, potentially help someone in need. And that's pretty cool at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
I mean, if I'm being honest, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get into the public sector. Initially, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in like the public sector. I just didn't
Hmm.
know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to do something of that nature. So,
Hmm.
I mean, if you have more questions about this industry, I mean, you can always email me and I can always forward them on to Ashley. I'm going to give you her info at the end of this. But, if you still have like, yeah, but, or what if this happens or whatever, that's totally fine. But just, give it some thought and send your questions and ask because I'm pretty sure there's probably an answer for any of those.
Hmm.
Um, so that leads me to my next question for you. If there's any advice that you would give to the small business government contracting industry, what would it be?
Oh, I would say that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Hmm.
And don't give up too soon because of frustration or get discouraged. I see a lot of small businesses and a lot of our customers even start to get traction. And I just want to make sure they're not giving up too soon because of unrealistic expectations. And, keep showing up, keep getting better, keep reaching out to customers, keep responding to RFIs, keep going to industry days, ask for help. Um, Government customers and teaming partners will notice. If you keep showing up at these events and are targeted and do your homework, they'll know. And also, don't feel intimidated. None of us, I mean, here's a secret. None of us know all the acronyms. None of us know all the FAR clauses by heart. It might feel that way, but it's not reality. So just realize, like, make some time and make learning a commitment, but realize you're never going to know all of it. We don't all know all of it. So, don't feel intimidated. Realize that you can learn and grow over time. And then also, as you already said, Aubrey, there's so many resources. Ask for help, reach out to me and my team, reach out to your Apex accelerators. There's so many resources that can help you. So just don't try to go it alone.
Hmm. Hmm. I don't think I could have said that any better. I'm always excited to hear what the answer is to that because I ask all of my guests that question. So, and it's always different, but everything is just so brilliant and very applicable to anyone that's listening to the show. And lastly, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Sure. So the best way to get in touch with me and my team would be via email. So my email is anicholson at Avenir, Avenir technology.net. And of course, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and follow me. It's just Ashley Nicholson, and it'll say CEO of Avenir Technology.
If you have any questions for Ashley or for me, please make sure to shoot them over. But I will link Ashley's email and her LinkedIn page in the show notes. And as always, thanks so much for listening. If you're something you really want to hear us talk about, email me at breakingthestandard@gmail.com. Make sure to connect with us on LinkedIn and go listen to the show on Apple and Spotify. And until next time, bye.
Bye.